are a nightmare. I truly understand that as you're going through perimenopause and menopause, hot flashes are like the #1 symptom that people report, and for good reason, because they are miserable. They come on randomly, don't really know why they're coming on. They wake you up multiple times a night, a lot of times. And as I'm coaching my perimenopausal and menopausal clients, this is something that we really have to work on as we go through their program. Some people have it worse than others, right? And so you really have to understand where you're at with it and how to overcome those hot flashes if you can. And this podcast today is going to be all about how to actually do that, because there are ways in a protocol to manage hot flashes. Some people can manage them all the way down to nothing. Some people can manage them to where they're just not nearly as bad as they used to be, just depending on your genetics and how much estrogen has dropped in menopause for you. Now, welcome back to the Revitalize podcast. My name is Tyler. I coach women over 40 going through perimenopause and menopause to their best self, to their best health. If you want to understand why a 26-year-old guy like me coaches women in perimenopause and menopause, go watch my last video because I talk about it there. But this podcast is not going to be about that. So diving into hot flashes, why do they happen? When your estrogen drops in perimenopause and menopause, it affects a lot of things. One of them being the hypothalamus in the brain. The hypothalamus is where the central nervous or central system is for a lot of different processes in your body, a lot of different hormone production in your body. One of those processes being thermal regulation. So your body's ability to heat itself up and cool itself down whenever it needs to, like regulate if you're too cold or too hot. When estrogen drops in perimenopause and menopause, your brain has a lot of estrogen receptors. Specifically, the hypothalamus has a lot of estrogen receptors. So it's not getting the estrogen into it that it needs. And the thermal regulation becomes second tier essentially, and it downregulates, doesn't work as properly as it used to. And there's ways to manage this. The hypothalamus can be targeted with food, first and foremost. And food is the first line of defense for this. Because when you're not eating enough, so if you're trying to diet all the time and your food isn't nearly high enough, you're probably not getting enough nutrients to support your brain, support your hypothalamus, and especially support your weight loss and your muscle growth, which will be the next point. And so eating enough food, eating the right amount of food, so not overeating either, is very important. You need to have enough energy to prioritize all the processes in your body, including brain function. So then it goes from, okay, you're eating enough. Now we need to look at the nutrients a little bit. Protein is going to be huge, not just for your brain health, but so that you can build muscle, because like I said, muscle is going to be the next thing we talk about. So starting with protein and then looking at those micronutrient targets, specifically targeting the hypothalamus with a few different things. The first being polyphenols. So polyphenols are just plant-based antioxidants. So pretty straightforward. It's going to be things like berries. The more colorful, the better. It's going to be things like nuts, walnuts, almonds, cashews, and it's going to be things that vegetables that have a lot of color too. So bell peppers, broccoli, kale, things like that. Essentially, you can just think the more color a food has, the more antioxidants it has, except for obviously processed foods like Cheetos, they're artificially colored. But you can also do legumes, so beans, lentils, chickpeas, things of that nature to supplement your protein and your antioxidant intake. Because that's going to give you things like vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin K, selenium, manganese, all of which will help target the hypothalamus and help your thermal regulation processes, along with all your other processes, work a little bit better. If you want to look up more foods that might benefit you, just type in foods high in polyphenols and it'll give you a full list there. The next thing that you need to work on after that, outside of the food, is going to be muscle growth. Muscle growth is going to be really, really important in making your body more resilient, and it helps your body thermal regulate as you exercise. It's kind of like a use it or lose it. The more you use your body's ability to thermal regulate by sweating, by getting up and moving, getting your blood flowing really well, the better it is going to function, because your body likes to make sure things function properly if they're getting used. It's kind of like your metabolism. If you're not eating enough food consistently, if you're not letting your muscle grow, or if you're not pushing your muscle to grow, your metabolism is just going to get slower and slower because it's not really being used, it's not really being pushed. And so it's a use it or lose it situation. You either use it and push it, or it's going to slowly get worse. Same thing with thermal regulation. And so start working out, start building muscle. That's why you need enough protein so that you can also build muscle. And protein affects every structural cell in your body, even your brain. So very important to get enough of it. When you're working out, you don't have to go overboard. Like start building muscle with 3 days a week, like 15 to 20 minutes at the gym or at home, doing muscle building exercises. So like not HIIT workouts, though we'll talk about a little bit of sprint interval training in a second on like how you can incorporate that as well. But make sure there's plenty of rest time so you can actually build muscle and get that right adaptation. Very, very important outside of even just the hot flashes, but it will help the hot flashes as well. And that's what we're talking about today. So I'm not going to go in too far into detail, but in perimenopause and menopause, muscle is gold. It's vital. So like you need to make sure you're getting enough muscle. And with protein to build that muscle, if you struggle getting enough protein, like so many women that I coach do when they first come to me, I do have a protein guide, the ultimate guide to protein. It is in the link in the description. It's free. Go grab that. It has like 40 different high protein foods that you can incorporate in a bunch of different recipes with suggestions on like how much protein you actually need. So go ahead and grab that. It's in the description. The last thing that I want to talk about is like supplementation, on like how supplementation can help you actually manage hot flashes. One of the big ones being omega-3. If you're not getting enough of this in your food, which I know a lot of people struggle with, omega-3 is going to be massive for hot flashes and inflammation in general. Omega-3 is a fatty acid, and it can be found in a lot of higher fat foods, more so like fattier fish. So salmon and sardines are great choices. And then oils, specifically olive oil, is going to be the best option there. And then egg yolks as well also have a little bit of omega-3, but olive oil and then fatty fish are going to be your best options. And then like I mentioned before with the polyphenols, walnuts have a fantastic amount of omega-3 if you wanted to add in walnuts into your diet, almost as like a supplement, because that's what I do sometimes. That's what I have clients do sometimes, add in walnuts or almonds or cashews as almost like a supplement to hit these nutritional targets that they have. But omega-3 is going to be really, really important. All the research does indicate that it helps regulate the pituitary gland, which is found in the hypothalamus. And then the last thing you might want to supplement with is vitamin B12, and that's coming from mostly animal-based proteins. So if you're not eating a lot of animal-based proteins, B12 is hard to come by. If you're vegetarian or vegan, B12 is hard to come by. You might need to supplement with that. But B12 is very, very important for two things. One being memory, and then it's also really important to regulate energy levels and fatigue and depression. So having enough B12 is very, very important. And it's really easy to get enough B12 in your system. Most supplements, B12 is like the easiest supplement to actually get because you can add so much of it because it's water soluble. So you can't really get too much B12. You're just going to pee it out most of the time. So B12 is another one to add in. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is SIT training or sprint interval training. A little different than HIIT because HIIT is high intensity, kind of going the whole time. Sprint interval training is more short bursts of training. And this is what I just added into one of my multiple of my clients' programs to finally push the hot flashes out of their system. Because we were doing really well with everything else. And it was like, well, it's gotten better, but it's still not fully there. So we added sprint interval training because the research on sprint interval training is showing that it really helps your thermoregulation system work really, really well, even in perimenopause and menopause. Now, what sprint interval training is, it is short bursts of like all out exercise. So I have them doing 20 to 40 seconds of short bursts, depending on their skill level, their activity level, and then up to 3 minutes of rest time. You can do this at like one minute of like a burst if you're really fit. And then you can come back down to like 2 minutes of rest. It just depends on like kind of your skill level. But a lot of the women that I'm coaching aren't really ready for that. So we do 40 seconds on and then like 3 minutes off. And that 40 seconds on needs to be like all out. Typically done on an exercise bike, but you can do it running. You can do it on an incline treadmill. You're just not going to get as much of the all out effect as you would with like a lower impact like bike or something. So the 40 seconds on is all out. You make sure you're doing a full rest time. And what that does is it spikes your heart rate way up and then brings it all the way back down. So your body is pumping blood through really quickly. Your thermoregulation system kicks on, spikes up, and then it needs to work to bring everything back down. And it's utilizing that system more and more and more. You're sweating a lot, your body's using the thermal regulation system and getting really optimal at using it. And what that does is it goes back to the use it or lose it situation. It's using it a lot more. So it starts prioritizing being able to function properly. And the clients that I have that have done all the other stuff first, then we add in sit training over a 5-week period. I had a client just do this over a 5-week period, and she was doing everything perfect. So don't expect this to be, a week-long process. Expect it to be more of a month to 2-month process. She did everything perfect from week 1 to week 5 through the protocol, added in sit training in week 4, and after 2 weeks of sit training and doing everything else and supplementing correctly, she reported no hot flashes at night. She was having a terrible time sleeping. Week 3, she reported she's like noticed she had less hot flashes. Week 4, she was like, I barely had any hot flashes. And in week 5, she had none. And she has had none the last 2 weeks after that. So all of this stuff works, and you just have to put it into practice. And again, I'm not saying they're gonna have 0 hot flashes. I'm just saying that this will help. It is super beneficial, regardless of your hot flashes to do anyway. And so I say, go ahead and do it. Follow this protocol, starting with the very first thing, moving into the final thing that I talked about. So going from talking about your food first, then the micronutrients, and then the supplementation, building muscle, and then sprint interval training, and your body is ready for that. Now, if you have any questions, please reach out. Again, thank you for watching the Revitalize podcast, for listening to the Revitalize podcast. I love coaching women over 40. It's like my passion to make sure that these women are taken care of, because I see they just get left behind in the medical industry. And that is why I do what I do. Thank you for watching. If any of this works for you, please come back and leave a comment on this video so that other people know, hey, you need to try this out, because this is the protocol. Thanks for watching. Share with a friend, subscribe. I'll see you next time.